Dear students, welcome back. Next philosopher of Unit 5 is Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Jean-Jacques Rousseau was one of the prominent naturalistic philosophers of education. His ideas on education has been written in his famous publication like The Progress of Arts and Science, Social Contract, New Phileas, and Emile. Rousseau's naturalist philosophy shows in three forms: social naturalism, psychological naturalism, and physical naturalism. According to him, everything is good as it comes from the hands of author of nature, but everything degenerates in the hands of man. According to him, nature is the only pure, clean, and ennobling influence. Human society is thoroughly corrupt. Therefore, man should be freed from the bondage of society and should live in the state of nature. Human nature is essentially good and it must be given fullest opportunities for free development in a free atmosphere. Rousseau is the first man in the world who brought about a remarkable change in the social and political structure of many countries through his sound educational ideas. In fact, his thought-provoking ideas such as liberty, equality, and fraternity caused the modification of political systems and the development of sociological tendency in education. As he has revolutionized our thinking in no many ways. He is considered as the father of civilization. He has introduced a new theory and practice of education through his writing on religion, society, marriage, education, and government. He has highlighted the evils of society and wanted to reform it by modifying the process of education according to the needs and interests of individual and society. He is the pioneer of making education into practical process by introducing trade, business, leatherwork, and embroidery as livelihood. He is the chief exponent of naturalism, which has a great impact on modern education. The introduction of new teaching techniques and giving importance to the study of natural sciences make him a distinguished philosopher and place his name in the top among the educationists. Life of Rousseau. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, the first man in the history of mankind to preach the gospel about common man, a great educator of the 18th century. 18th century, the champion of modern education, the most important naturalistic philosopher, a powerful thinker, father of French Revolution, and an apostle of individual liberty, was born in the small city of Geneva in 1712. He lost his mother soon after his birth and was brought up by his father. He received his early education at the hands of his father, who was poor watchmaker and a private tutor. His father was quite ignorant of the art of bringing up his son. Therefore, Rousseau fell into bad habits for which he was generally very severely beaten in the school. As a result, by nature he became vehemently opposed to his inhuman practice. He developed a tendency of sentimentality and sensuality. He felt the school at the age of 12 and tried different sorts of occupations, but he failed in all. He was wandering from one place to another and met different types of people and learned to sympathize with the poor. One day he became very tired and hungry because of his aimless wanderings. He priced Chevrolet, which took him to his home and fed him. This incident shaped the life and character of Rousseau. He became familiar with the existing social and philosophical problems. The writing of Hobbes, Locke, Montaigne, Pascal, Fenelon, Voltaire, Leibniz, Descartes, Kepler, and Newton influenced him very deeply. His mind was occupied with problems concerning education and government. After a number of journeys, a desultory study of Catholic, Catholicism, music, and a survey of all science, he tried his hands at various professions like those of a private tutor, music teacher, secretary, composer, and dramatist. He settled in Paris in 1741 and became a writer. Rousseau was particularly influenced by the poverty and sufferings of the people. He hated the society for the evils and wanted to reform it. In his publications, he condemned the existing institutions and portrayed the oppression and corruption in the society. He declared everything is good as it comes from the hands of the author of the nature. But everything degenerates in the hands of man. He bestowed the slogan return to nature or back to nature or follow nature. He wrote, man is born free and everywhere he is in chains. His work Emile revolted against the canons of society. France and Switzerland banned this book and burnt it in many places. He earned the displeasure of the French authorities. As a consequence, Rousseau had to live in exile for many years. After 11 years, he returned from England to France and wrote his last book entitled Confessions. He was very much disgusted and disappointed by the political authorities of France and Switzerland. Rousseau, the most influential political as well as educational philosopher, died in 1778 due to a sudden attack of thrombosis which many believed to be a suicide. But his profound thoughts such as liberty, equality, and fraternity inspired the French Revolution in 1789. The insurrection not only exalted the fame of Rousseau but also brought about a remarkable change in the socio-economic and political condition of several countries. Now, philosophy of Rousseau. The philosophy of Rousseau emerges as a revolt against the artificial and autocratic society. He advocates the idea that there should be a natural state, a natural man, and a natural civilization. According to him, cities are the graves of civilization. So, his philosophy is termed as naturalism. He believes that everything is good as it comes from the hands of the author of nature, but everything degenerates in the hands of man. He further indicates that a child is essentially good, but his contact with society makes him bad. In his book Social Contract, he writes, man is born free, but everywhere he is in chains. He emphatically states that man himself is responsible for his miseries and sorrow. Therefore, the human society should give up the present artificial mode of the life and go back to nature for forming a natural man, a natural state, and a natural civilization in order to regain the old vitality and happiness. According to Rousseau, the slogan "Return to Nature" is the pinnacle for all evils. In the field of politics, he emphasizes the concept of liberty, equality, and fraternity. He revolts against traditional education and raises his voice to free the child from the tyranny of strict discipline and the artificiality of school environment and stereotyped methods of teaching. He wants men to be free from the bondage of society by educating them not for citizenship but for manhood. Thus, his philosophical ideas combine his political, social, and educational ideology. It is the outcome of three factors, namely the state of time, extremely varied experiences of life, and his impulsive and emotional nature. which influence and shape the philosophy of Rousseau. Rousseau's three concepts of nature. Rousseau is the most important naturalistic philosopher. So, he wants the pupil to live according to nature and follow the order of nature in education. According to him, nature has several connotations, but he has stated three concepts of nature. First, nature as endowment, innate tendencies. According to Rousseau, education comes to us from nature, from men and from things. He regards nature as equivalent to endowment. He believes that the best learning takes place when the child is free to develop and grow according to his natural impulses. Nature is the spontaneous development of the innate disposition of the child. Rousseau says, when I want to train a natural man, I do not want to make him a savage and to send him back to the woods. But living in the world of social life, he should not let himself be carried away by the passions and prejudices of man. Let him see with his eyes and feel with his heart. So, education must start from the child's instinctive, instinctive tendencies. Second one, nature isolation from society. Rousseau believes that nature is good and everything, but society is negative, which drags the child away from nature. According to him, society is an artificial and unnatural product which is full of evils. So, the child should be saved and isolated from the evil influences of society. He wants the child to be brought up in the lap of nature, that is, in contact with the beauties and wonders of nature, away from social influence. It means non-social education or preventive education which is not based on tradition and formalities of society. Thus, nature is defined as negative to society. Third one, natural phenomena, living according to nature. Rousseau is of the opinion that the child must be given education in a natural environment. He wants the child to live according to nature in accordance with the rational principles of the universe. Since Rousseau is a great lover of nature, mountains, streams, ocean, sunrise, sunset, solitude, and country of life, he recommends contacts with hill, streams, plants, birds, trees, animals, stones, and physical forces of all kinds. He believes that one becomes a natural man automatically when he is brought up the taught in the natural environment. Now, Rousseau's philosophy of education. Education according to the nature of child. Rousseau believes that education is only remedy to shun the evil influences of society. He therefore advocates that the child is the center of gravity. According to him, the nature of a child should determine the nature of teaching rather than a logical order of subject matters, which is suited only to the adult mind. He emphasizes the dictum that the child should be treated as a child, not as an adult. Hence, the child should be provided with real, vital, and concrete experiences. Second, education according to different stages of child. Rousseau spells out how the child should be provided education. In his book Emile, he regards Emile as an imaginary male child and divides his scheme of education according to his different stages of growth. According to him, childhood has its own way of seeing, thinking, and feeling. There is time for every kind of teaching, and we ought to recognize it. The different stages of child are infancy, 0 to 5 years, childhood, 5 to 12 years, adolescence, 12 to 15 years, and youth, 15 to 18 years. Hence, the construction of curriculum and the method of teaching should be in accordance with the different stages of the child. Next, education from nature, man, and things. According to Rousseau, the education of the child comes from nature, from man, and from things. Education from nature means the internal development of our organs as a consequence of our relationship with our physical environment. Education from man means we are taught to make use of that development through our relationship with our social environment. Education from things is the acquisition made by our own experiences with the subject which surround us. Rousseau says that harmony in education is possible by subordinating the education of man and things to that of nature because we have no control over nature. So, we have to ensure cooperation of these three factors for imparting the ideal education. Next, education, a process of guidance. Rousseau believes that education is the process of guidance by the teacher, but it is not instruction by the teacher. According to him, the art of teaching consists in making the pupil wish to learn. His concern is to educate the child to live his life. Now, Rousseau's negative education. Rousseau was the first man to stress on negative education. He states the most dangerous period in human life lies between birth and the age of 12. Hence, education from 5 to 12 should be negative effort by the educators who should leave the child to learn how to use time wisely. Negative education is the preparation against the social condition in which the child lives. It consists not at all in teaching virtue, but it shields the child's heart from the vices and his mind from errors. Now, Rousseau's concept of education, the educational views of Rousseau are considered to be new and modern. They are meant to relieve the child from strict discipline, artificial school, social environment, undue control, and rigid methods of teaching. According to Rousseau, education should aim at the fullest development of the child's innate potentialities and powers in a natural environment. He has defined education thus: it is a process of development into an enjoyable, rational, harmoniously balanced, useful, and hence natural life. It means the natural development of organs and powers of the child. Education as such is a lifelong process. He states to live is not merely to breathe, it is to act, to make use of our organs, senses, our faculties, and of all those parts of ourselves, which gives us the feeling of an existence. Now, educational thoughts of Rousseau. Rousseau was a strong critic of the traditional system of education. He was against feeding knowledge to students without understanding. He believed that the child has his own ways of seeing, thinking, and experiencing. They should not impose principles or methods to be followed. They should be free to understand and study the content the way they like. He was supporter of negative education. Explaining his new system of education, Rousseau said, "Give me a 12-year-old child who does not know anything. By 15 years of age, I will teach him so much as other children read in 15 years of early life." According to him, negative education is self-education and it is the education of the sense organs and body. He believed in engaging children to learn in the natural environment. He said when the child learns in playground, it is many times more useful than what the child learns in the classroom. In his book Emile, Rousseau suggested meaningful education for the infancy, childhood, adolescence, and youth. At the infancy stage, Rousseau suggested to allow the child to freely engage in playing and exercising his body and remaining active. To train the instinct, the child should be made free to experience and indulge in good things. At the childhood stage, Rousseau suggested to learn through experience and observation. He suggested that the development of sense organ is the aim of education at this stage. At the adolescence stage, Rousseau suggested that the aim of education should be to develop adolescent personality through hard work, guidance, and study. At the stage of youth, Rousseau suggested that the aim of education should be to achieve the bodily, sensory, mental, social, and moral development of the individual. The educational views of Rousseau are considered to be new and modern. They are meant to relieve the child from strict discipline, artificial school, social environment, undue control, and rigid method of teaching. According to Rousseau, education should aim at the fullest development of child's innate potentialities and powers in a natural environment. He has defined education thus: it is a process of development into an enjoyable, rational, harmoniously balanced, useful, and hence natural life. It means the natural development of organs and powers of child. Education as such is a lifelong process. He states to live is not merely to breathe, it is to act, to make use of our organs, senses, our faculties, and of all those parts of ourselves which give us the feeling of an existence. Aim of education. The aim of education is to help the child to remain alive. According to Rousseau, life is not merely to breathe, but it is to act and to make use our organs, senses, and faculties which give us the feeling of our existence. In other words, life is to live, to work, to develop, and properly utilize the various parts of the body, the sense organs, and the various other powers of the body to make the child a real human being. The first aim of education is physical development. Rousseau feels that a strong physique is essential to develop the child into a healthy and wholesome personality. A feeble body makes a feeble mind. He says that we are born weak and we want strength. We are poor and we want help and so on. Thus, whatever we do not have is to be given by education. And this is the ultimate aim of education. Second aim, development of senses. Rousseau believes that senses are the gateways of knowledge. So, development or training of senses is the important task of education. It is education which helps the child to attain pleasure by using his organs and senses and by applying his strength. Next aim, development of innate faculty. The aim of education is to help the child to develop his innate faculties in a natural way and in the natural environment. To establish harmony between man, objects, and nature, a child's natural impulses and instincts must be particularly attended. Next aim, intellectual development. The aim of education is to develop the child to the fullest for his complete and happy living. So, Rousseau stresses on the importance of intellectual development during one's childhood. To achieve intellectual development, he has recommended physical science, language, mathematics, history, and geography. Next aim is learning trade. The aim of education is to prepare the child to live his life. For this purpose, the child must learn a trade, a mechanical art, and manual labor. This can give him a living. Next aim is development of social and moral values. The aim of education is to lead the child to become a member of the society and an ideal head of the family. Rousseau emphasizes moral and spiritual education during youth in order to prepare the child to lead a good life. Now, aim of education at different stages of child. The aim of education, according to Rousseau, change at different stages of the child's development because each stage has different tastes, interests, needs, and stresses. Therefore, the aim of education should be changed in accordance with the growth of the child. In the infancy stage, infancy begins at birth and continues up to 5 years. During this period, development and strengthening of every part of the body is essential so that the child can grow up healthy and strong. Rousseau held the opinion all weaknesses comes from weakness. The child should be made strong so that he will do nothing which is bad. So, he has suggested providing the infant full freedom to engage in playing and exercising his body. Thus, education aims at physical development during infancy. Next stage is childhood stage. This stage lasts from 5 to 12 years. It is the period of development of the child's sense organ through experience and observation. Hence, the aim of education is to help and the child to observe and experience various things in nature and develop his sense organs. Next stage, adolescence stage. At this stage, 12 to 15 years, education aims at developing adolescent personality through hard work, guidance, and study of various subjects. Since the aim of education is intellectual development, Rousseau recommends subjects like physical science, language, mathematics, history, and geography. Next stage is youth stage, 15 to 18 or 20 years. The aim of education during this stage is the development of emotions and sentiments, that is the training of the heart. The development of sentiments leads to the development of moral and social qualities in the youth. Rousseau retreated that moral and religious education should be imparted to the youth so as to prepare them to lead a good life. Thus, education aims at preparing the youth to become a member of society and an ideal head of the family. Now, Rousseau's concept of curriculum and methods of teaching. Rousseau divides his whole programs of education on the basis of the development stage of humans. In his book Emile, he divides his scheme of education curriculum into five stages. The curriculum for the first four stages is in accordance with the developmental stage of Emile and his felt needs. The fifth stage is meant for the education of Sophie, an imaginary girl to become an ideal wife of Emile. Rousseau has prescribed different subjects and activities on the basis of infancy, childhood, adolescence, and youth of Emile and Sophie. First, education for infancy 0 to 5 years. Rousseau recommends negative education during infancy. At this stage, instead of teaching subjects, attention should be given to the development of the child's body and his sense organs. His dress should be comfortable so that he does not have any difficulty in the free movement of his body organs. He should be allowed to play with whatever things he likes without any force from outside and wander about freely in the countryside. His playthings should be simple, natural, like leaves, plants, flowers, fruits, stones, etc., and not expensive toys. The child should be brought up by his mother and he should be given due protection. Next, education for childhood 5 to 12 years. Rousseau recommends, Rousseau opposes the use of any textbook for educating the child. The child should be given training to learn everything through observation and experience. Rousseau suggests various activities by way of training for the development of the mind and the power of reasoning through negative education. The child should be given full freedom to use his sense in the natural environment. His eyes should be trained to measure height, weight, distance, color, and size. Music educates his ears, flowers train his nose, weather educates his skin, and so on. Rousseau's advice for this stage is exercise the body, the organs, the senses, and power, and keep the soul laying for a fallow as long as you can. However, geometry may be taught during this stage. Moral education should not be given as long as the child does not understand the meaning of morality. But a little of moral education may be given through activity. Rousseau opines that the child will learn his morality by the natural consequences of his own actions. Next stage, education for adolescents 12 to 15 years. This is a good period of intellectual development during which the child should be taught various subjects and activities. It is a suitable time for work, instruction, and inquiries. Rousseau prescribes a formal curriculum consisting of physical sciences, languages, mathematics, music, painting, woodwork, and social science. He opines that the study of science will enhance the curiosity of the child, his inclination towards research, inventions, and self-education. Painting helps the pupils to train the muscles and eye. Handicraft helps to develop the ability to walk. Rousseau wants to teach Emile industrial exchange and professional experience in banking and transportation to prepare him to earn his livelihood. He recommends for reading the book Robinson Crusoe, a study of life according to nature. Next stage, education for youth 15 to 20 years. During this stage, the child is expected to grow emotionally, aesthetically, socially, and morally to adapt himself to the conduct and interest of others. Rousseau wants Emile to get training in moral and religious education about his relations with his fellow men and develop moral qualities such as benevolence, kindness, service, and sympathy. He suggests he suggests that moral education should be given through activities and occupations and not through lectures on ethics. Travel through different countries is recommended for knowing the world, their languages and modes of life in the neighboring country. The youth should visit hospitals, prisons and orphanages in order to see the evils and miseries of the society directly and gain first-hand knowledge. Next stage is education for women. Since men and women differ from each other, Rousseau prescribes a separate curriculum for the education of female. Sophie, imaginary girl of Rousseau, he mentions in his email that men should be strong and active. The women should be weak and passive. According to him, men are born to serve, women are born to please. Women is simply supplementary to the nature of man. The aim of women's education is to be pleasant in his sight, to win his respect and love, to train him in childhood, to tend him in manhood, to counsel and console, to make his life pleasant and happy. These are the duties of women for which she should be taught while she is young. He remarks, an illiterate woman is the plague of her husband, her children, her family, her servant, and everyone. So, he recommends to provide education in reading and writing to make them efficient to keep their body healthy and adorn themselves. In this respect, they should learn housekeeping, sewing, embroidery, weaving, and get religious education too. They should also learn singing, dancing, and other accomplishments. Methods of teaching according to Rousseau. Rousseau is against the artificial and harsh method of teaching, which repressed the natural inclinations and tendencies of the child. He recommends simple and direct methods of instruction according to the nature of child. Direct experience and observation. Rousseau favors direct experience and observation method of education to develop the sense organs and reasoning capacity of the child. He urges children to acquire experience before expression and objects before words. He says, let the child learn nothing from books which they can learn from experience. He believes that geography could be learned by observation of natural phenomena. He says, give your scholar no verbal lesson. He should be taught by experience alone. Next, learning by doing. Rousseau stands against the rote method of learning and believes that the knowledge acquired through actual doing or experience is far more permanent than knowledge acquired through words. In the words of Rousseau, teach by doing whenever you can and only fall back upon words. When doing is out of the question, Rousseau insists on practical education rather than theoretical one. He finds that long lectures before the child and blunt his appetite for new things. Hence, instead of delivering long lectures to the child, it is better to give him the opportunity to act for himself. Next method is playway method. Rousseau maintains education should be practical rather than oral. The child should not read through books. He should stop reading words. For Rousseau, education to the child should be provided by play. He feels that work or plays are all one for the child. His games are his work. He knows no difference. He should be allowed to play or walk and explore the environment in whatsoever way he like and he will learn it that way. Next method is heuristic method. Rousseau recommends heuristic method of teaching in order to prepare the child to become a researcher and discover. It is a method of discovery and problem solving in subjects like natural science and mathematics. Heuristic method of teaching prepares the child to find out new things. Next example is better than percept. This method is recommended to impart moral education. Rousseau believes in the principle that example is better than precept. The teacher should set an example of moral behavior instead of lecturing on morality to the child. An opportunity may be provided to him to practice virtue. Now, role of teacher according to Rousseau. Rousseau assigns only a secondary place to the teacher in the educative process. The teacher has a limited role in imparting education to the child. He is not regarded as an instructor but only a guide. The most important task of the teacher is to motivate the child to learn by exploiting his innate tendency. He should have a profound understanding of the child's nature and be able to control his emotional reactions in a proper manner. He should not impose any rules of control or his willingness upon the child. He should allow the child perfect freedom and guide him properly to live in the natural environment. Now, concept of discipline. Being a naturalist philosopher, Rousseau suggested the following disciplinary practices in education. Complete freedom to the child, no imposed punishment, only the child can experience natural punishment that can further direct the child to do the right and good things. Obedience to natural law, because neglect or violation of these laws invariably leads to pain and suffering. Naturally possessed fine character. The function of education is to foster natural development in the child. Therefore, Rousseau advocates complete freedom with a minimum guidance and wants total absence of any restraints on the child. The child should be left in the free environment so that he can develop his natural powers. There is no place for giving punishment or reward. Since nature is a great teacher, there will be natural discipline. Rousseau assumes that the child has no knowledge of good and bad, but he suffers pain when he makes mistakes and pleasure when he does something right. For instance, if Emile breaks the window of the bedroom, he should not be punished by his tutor, but let him sleep in the room with the broken window, and the cold which follows will teach him not to break windows. This is the natural punishment through which the child will learn better discipline. Now, school organization. Rousseau objects to the system of school education. He believes that the child is born innocent and pure, but he is defiled and distorted by the defective environment of the school. He therefore suggests that it is better to separate the child from his parents, to take him away from school and leave him in the natural environment. Because in natural surroundings, the child will himself look after the development of his actual ability. In fact, the location of school should be in natural surrounding, away from the city. Rousseau's contribution to education. Rousseau, the father of modern educational theory and practice, he influenced many great educators of the 19th and 20th centuries. He occupies a very prominent place in the world of education. In the words of R.H. Quick, Rousseau did in the world of ideas what the French revolutionists afterwards did in the world of politics. He made a clean sweep and endeavored to start afresh. He is regarded as the apostle of individual liberty, equality, and fraternity. Let us discuss his contribution in the field of modern education. First, pioneer of modern education. Rousseau is the forerunner of modern educational psychology. He provides new directions and new dimensions to education which is quite suitable to the child. His temperament, needs, inclinations, and capacity. Thus, the aim of education is to foster the innate potentialities of the child in a natural way. This is an important contribution of Rousseau. Modern psychology and education are fully based on his finding. He initiated the psychological movement in education by emphasizing the importance of individual differences, the psychology of growth, learning by doing, child's native interests and tendencies, motivation, play and activity principle. Next, discovery of unfolded traits of the child. Rousseau is the first great educator to discover and recognize the traits of childhood. He divides the stages of a child's growth and finds out the distinctions and independence of each stage. According to him, each stage has its own characteristics and needs. In his own words, childhood has the ways of seeking, thinking, and feeling peculiar to itself. Nothing can be more foolish than to substitute our ways to them. This concept of Rousseau was put into practice by Pestalozzi and Froebel, who stressed on the child-centered education based on the child's needs, interests, inclinations, tendencies, impulses, instincts, and his nature. Next is redeemer of social evils. Rousseau is the champion of individual liberty. He succeeds in freeing the individual from the chains of artificial social setup and educational environment. He delivers the child from the torture of the teacher and the society. He eloquent on the right of man, right of childhood, against social evil. This eloquent philosophy of Rousseau has created a new epoch in the field of education and politics. Next, introducer of new methods of teaching. Rousseau advocates and introduces new teaching techniques which have been accepted and implemented by modern educators. He suggests the modern method of problem solving, saying, put problems before the child and let him solve them himself. Let him know nothing because you have told him, but because he has learned it himself. Let him not be taught science, let him discover it. His emphasis on direct experience, practical activities, learning by doing, no verbal lesson, problem solving, discovery, and heuristic approach probe a landmark in the methodology of learning. Next, founder of sound educational principle. According to Rousseau, true education comes by judgment and reasoning rather than memory. The judgment and reasoning is based on the first-hand experience of man, nature, and things. He says that a subject should be taught by direct experience. He advocates that the child should be taught through concrete things rather than abstract signs and symbols. In his words, in general, never substitute the science for the things itself, save when it is impossible to show the thing. Thus, he becomes the founder of sound educational principles, having a great impact on modern education. Next, supporter of free and positive discipline. Rousseau stands in favor of free and positive discipline, which holds true even today. He condemns punishment and opposes imposition of any rules which destroy the originality and intellectual interest of the child. He recommends maximum freedom for the child so that he may develop in the natural environment. In the words of Rousseau, let a child move freely in the nature and learn from his own personal experience and actual participation in day-to-day life activities. Moral education should be given through examples at an appropriate stage. Next, forerunner of sociological basis of education. Rousseau lays the foundation of sociological tendency in modern education. His happy blending of individual and social training serves as a base for democratic education. His emphasis on moral and emotional development and sense training gives a sociological basis to education. Democratic concepts such as liberty, equality, and fraternity of Rousseau have a great impact on both education and politics. Next, introducer of vocational training. Rousseau is the first to propose introduction of vocational training as a part of general education. In fact, the present day emphasis on vocational education is the outcome of his contribution. His stress on learning a trade has brought about a remarkable change in the educational field. Modern educationists such as Pestalozzi, Mahatma Gandhi, and Vivekananda have emphasized the value of craft in education. Thus, Rousseau's vocational ideas have broadened the principle of education. Next, creator of child-centered education. Rousseau is the first educator to give a prominent place to the child in the educative process. He has stressed on that education should start with the child as the base. It should cater to the child's need, interest, inclinations, instincts, and his future. A sympathetic approach to the children motivates them to learn the subject. This fundamental idea inspires all educators, and thus education has become child-centered. Next, advisor of physical activities. Rousseau states that the positive education in childhood comprises physical and sensory training. He remarks, a feeble body makes a feeble mind. All weaknesses come from weakness. A child is bad only because he is weak. Make him strong and he will be good. He further says, cultivate your pupil's intelligence and give his body constant exercise. Make it strong and healthy. In order to make him good and wise, let him work, let him do things, let him run and shout. Let him be strong and he will soon be a man of reason. His views are accepted by almost all educators and philosophers and are being implemented in education. Now, negative education of Rousseau. The term negative education denotes Rousseau's aversion for the education system in the society. He regarded it unnatural and against the nature of the child. He believed that everything is good as it comes from the author of nature, but it degenerates in the hands of man. He also had the opinion that the child is good, but society makes him bad. He, therefore, advocated negative education to protect the child against the evil influences of the society. Negative education consists not in teaching virtue or truth, but in preserving the heart from vice and the mind from errors. According to him, negative education is a sort of preventive education for life, rather a preparation against the social condition in which the child lives. It does not give virtue. It protects from vice. It does not inculcate truth. It protects from error. It disposes the child to take the path that will lead him to truth when he has reached the age to understand it. Since the most dangerous period in human life lies between birth and the age of 12. Education from 5 to 12 should be largely negative by leaving the child to learn how to lose time wisely. Hence, negative education means allowing the child to move freely in nature so that he is able to perfect the organs of his body, which are the instrument for acquiring knowledge and protecting the heart of the child from the evil ways of the society. Now, characteristics of negative education. First is no positive education. Formal education or positive education should not be given in the childhood. The child should be allowed freely to learn and develop himself in the lap of nature. Hence, there is no need for the tutor to teach reading and writing during the childhood. That is from 5 to 12 years. Next is no time saving. Childhood is a period when the child should not save his time but he should lose it wisely. The child should run, jump, play all day long, which will strengthen the organs of his body and enable him to acquire more knowledge. So, time lost in play and recreational activities in the childhood is not lost but profitably gained. Next characteristics is no book learning. There is no place for books in negative education. Rousseau is against the bookish knowledge, which means learning by rote. He says, I hate books because they are a curse to children. They teach us to talk only that which we do not know. He advocates that the child should think for himself and learn with his own efforts. He further says, instead of making the child stick to his books, I keep him busy in the workshop. His hands will work to the profit of his mind. Next characteristics is no habit formation. Rousseau says the only habit which the child should be allowed to form is to contract no habit to all. Young children should not be made slaves of rigid habits. They should be left free in all their activities. He wants to form natural habits in the child. Next, next characteristics is no moral education. There is no place for direct moral instruction in negative education. The mind of the child is not matured enough to receive positive and direct moral education. Rousseau says much more harm than good is done by your ceaseless preaching and moralizing. According to him, let the child be left free to act and learn what is right or wrong by the consequences of his own actions. Next characteristics is no traditional methods of teaching. Rousseau hates traditional and formal education which imparts bookish knowledge under a strict discipline. Negative education is given to the child in the playway and activity method, direct experience and observation, learning by doing, and heuristic method. He says, give me a child of 12 who knows nothing at all. At 15, I will restore him to you, knowing as much as those who have been under instruction from infancy, with the difference that your scholar only knows things by heart, while mine knows how to use his knowledge. Next characteristics is no formal discipline. Rousseau advocates free and positive discipline for children in negative education. According to him, let the children suffer from the natural consequence of their own actions without the intervention of human being. In this way, they will set themselves right. For instance, if a child breaks motor rules, let him pay fine and learn not to do so again. Next characteristics is individual instruction. Negative education emphasizes individual instruction. The individuality of the child is recognized by the teacher. Hence, the instruction given to the child is based on his interest instincts, and capacity. Next characteristics is allow the child to follow his natural impulses. Negative education allows the child to follow his natural impulses to attain natural development. Rousseau says, speak to him of duty or obedience. He will not know what you are talking about. Bid him to something, he will pay no attention. Give him no orders at all. Absolutely none. Do not even let him think that you claim any authority over him. Rousseau asserts that the child should follow his natural impulses. Next characteristic is back to nature. Negative education of Rousseau insists that a child returns to nature which is good and pure and learns from it. It is believed that nature is the best teacher for providing negative education to the child so that he may grow in the natural environment. Now, criticism of negative education. Rousseau's negative education suffers from the following drawbacks. It neglects books and media which play a vital role in making the teaching learning process more effective and attractive. It is difficult to find naturalistic surroundings which are quite suitable for negative education and natural growth. It ignores the formation of habit in the child, which is essential for making a complete or perfect man. Absolute freedom given to the child is a myth and is harmful. We cannot allow the child to have a taste of poison and suffer the natural consequence of its action. It assigns very little importance to the teacher in the educative process. He should not impose any rules or authority on the child, but he should guide him to learn from nature. Education is more comprehensive and dynamic. Hence, physical nature alone is not sufficient for providing it. It is against the formal system of education, which has a vital part in the modern scheme of education. Negative education has no fixed aim of education and it is meant for only children up to the age of 12. It ignores the future by preparing the child for the present life that is earthly life. It neglects spiritual education and the spiritual world, but pays a great deal of attention of the to the material world. रूसो निषेधात्मक शिक्षा विधि में कहते हैं कि शिक्षा के लक्ष्य, पाठ्यक्रम, अनुशासन आदि के विषय में रूसो को विचारों को पढ़ने से यह पता चलता है कि वह विधायक शिक्षा के विरुद्ध था और निषेधात्मक शिक्षा को उपयुक्त मानता था। उसके समय में विद्यालय में बालकों को नाना प्रकार के पाठ्यक्रमों की शिक्षा दी जाती थी। उनको नैतिक और धार्मिक शिक्षा दी जाती थी। उनको विभिन्न प्रकार की पुस्तकें पढ़ाई जाती थी। उन्हें छोटा और प्रौढ़ समझकर प्रौढ़ जीवन के लिए तैयार किया जाता था। उनकी स्वाभाविक शक्तियों की ओर ध्यान ना देकर केवल उनके मानसिक विकास की ओर ध्यान दिया जाता था। रूसो ने इस प्रचलित शिक्षा प्रणाली का उग्र विरोध किया और उसका पूर्णतया निषेध करने की सलाह दी। उसका कहना था कि प्रचलित व्यवहार से बिल्कुल उल्टा करो और तुम सदैव ठीक करते। Take the reverse of the accepted practice and you will be almost always do right. यही निषेधात्मक शिक्षा थी। प्रचलित शिक्षा की आलोचना करते हुए रूसो ने लिखा था, हम उस क्रूर शिक्षा के विषय में क्या चिंतन करें जो वर्तमान को अनिश्चित भविष्य के लिए बलिदान कर देती है। बालक पर नाना प्रकार के बंधन उस काल्पनिक सुख के लिए लाद देती है जो वहां कदाचित कभी ना भोगेगा, जो बहुत पहले से ही उसे दुखी बनाकर दी जाती है। According to Rousseau, what must we think then of the barbarous education which sacrifices the present to an uncertain future, which loads a child's chains of every sort of beings by making him miserable in order to prepare for him long in advance some pretended happiness which probably he will never enjoy. रूसो ने यह आग्रह किया कि बालक को उसके वर्तमान जीवन का आनंद लेने दिया जाए। इसी से उसकी शक्तियों का स्वाभाविक विकास होगा। बाल्यावस्था स्वयं साध्य है, केवल भावी जीवन की तैयारी का साधन मात्र नहीं है। अस्तु बालक को अपनी अवस्था का पूरा आनंद लेने की स्वतंत्रता दी जानी चाहिए। निषेधात्मक शिक्षा को स्पष्ट करते हुए रूसो ने लिखा है, मैं उसे विधायक शिक्षा कहता हूं जो समय के पहले मस्तिष्क को बनाना चाहती है और बालकों को ऐसे कार्यों को सिखाना चाहती है जो प्रौढ़ों से संबंध रखते हैं। मैं उसे निषेधात्मक शिक्षा कहता हूं जो ज्ञान देने के पहले ग्रहण करने वाले अंगों को दृढ़ बनाती है और इंद्रियों के उचित उपयोग से विवेक शक्ति को बढ़ाती है। निषेधात्मक शिक्षा का तात्पर्य आलस्य में समय बिताना नहीं है, वह इससे बहुत दूर है। वह गुण प्रदान नहीं करती बल्कि दुर्गुणों से बचाती है। वह सच बोलना नहीं सिखाती बल्कि झूठ से बचाती है। वह बालक को सत्य की ओर ले जाने, समझने और अपनाने के लिए तैयार करती है। वह बालक को सत्य की ओर तक नहीं ले जाती जब तक कि उसमें सत्य को पहचानने और उससे प्रेम करने की शक्ति उत्पन्न नहीं हो जाती। प्रोफेसर मुनरो ने निषेधात्मक शिक्षा की निम्नलिखित रूप से व्याख्या की है। शारीरिक शिक्षा के क्षेत्र में निषेधात्मक शिक्षा का तात्पर्य स्वतंत्र रूप से खेलने, कूदने, सोचने, विचारने, कार्य करने, खुली हवा में रहने, साधारण कपड़े पहनने और सादा भोजन करने से है। बौद्धिक शिक्षा के क्षेत्र में निषेधात्मक शिक्षा का तात्पर्य निर्देश देने के विरोध से है। नैतिक शिक्षा के क्षेत्र में निषेधात्मक शिक्षा का तात्पर्य अपनी क्रियाओं के स्वाभाविक परिणामों के द्वारा नैतिक आदर्शों का ज्ञान प्राप्त करने से है। इस प्रकार निषेधात्मक शिक्षा शारीरिक, मानसिक, नैतिक सभी क्षेत्रों में स्वाभाविक विकास की पक्षपाती है। वह हर प्रकार के हस्तक्षेप के विरुद्ध है। उसमें बालक को स्वयं अपने अनुभव और क्रिया के द्वारा शिक्षा प्राप्त करनी होती है। वह बालक को सामाजिक और विद्यालय के प्रभाव से बचाना चाहती है, क्योंकि उसके अनुसार बालक स्वभावतया ही विकासवान और भला है। हमारा कर्तव्य केवल उसे बुरे प्रभावों से बचाना है। बालक की शिक्षा में प्रत्येक प्रकार के निर्देश, टाइम टेबल, नियम, अनुशासन तथा समय के सदुपयोग आदि की आलोचना करते हुए रूसो ने लिखा है, यह काल समय का उपयोग करने का नहीं, अपितु समय खोने का, जिसे वयस्क दृष्टि से समय का खोना समझा जाता है, वही वास्तव में बालक के विकास के लिए सबसे अधिक उपयुक्त है, क्योंकि बालक का खेलकूद और मनचाहे कामों में लगे रहना समय का खोना नहीं, बल्कि उसका सच्चा उपयोग है। पुस्तकीय और शाब्दिक शिक्षा के विरुद्ध निषेधात्मक शिक्षा अनुभव के ग्रहण, ज्ञानेंद्रियों की शिक्षा पर जोर देती है। रूसो का कहना था कि पुस्तकें बालक और वस्तुओं के बीच में आ जाती है और उसे अपने अनुभव द्वारा सीखने नहीं देती। अस्तु बालक को 12 वर्ष की आयु तक पुस्तकों से दूर रखकर केवल अनुभव से सीखने के लिए स्वतंत्र छोड़ दिया जाना चाहिए। इससे उसमें स्वयं गुणों का विकास होगा और वहां दुर्गुणों से बचा रहेगा। In a nutshell, Rousseau is the founder of the grand ideas liberty, equality, and fraternity, rights of man and rights of childhood. These ideas have had a profound influence on the educational theory and practice. His provocative thoughts and naturalistic philosophy have rendered a direct impetus to the formation of psychological, sociological, and scientific education. The educational doctrines of Rousseau have been put into practice by the later educators of the 19th and 20th centuries, such as Tagore, Mahatma Gandhi, Pestalozzi, Herbert Spencer, Froebel, John Dewey, and Westbrook. Munro has rightly remarked Rousseau was the forerunner of so many who have followed in the trace. He blazed through the forest until now they have become the broad highway of common travel. He is regarded as the champion of naturalism for advocating ideas like natural state, natural man, and natural civilization. In the words of Rousseau occupies an important place among the Western educators for his twofold ideas of the right of man and the rights of childhood. He is regarded as the father of French Revolution. In the words of Napoleon, without Rousseau, the French Revolution would not have occurred. When his ideas were applied to education, it created a new epoch also. He is to modern education what Plato was to ancient education. So, Rousseau contributed in the field of education a lot, as well as in the philosophy. Thank you. Thank you so much.